Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. My name is Ole Kagan, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator with LA County Library, and I welcome you to Work Ready, New Year, New Career. Before we get going with today's event, I'll take care of some housekeeping, do the land acknowledgement, and tell you a little bit about the Work Ready program. So, if you can hear me and see the slide on the screen, then you're good to go. However, if you're having trouble hearing me or seeing the slide on the screen, let me know in the chat and I will do my best to assist. If you'd like to listen to this presentation on the phone, you can do that by calling 1-669-900-6833 and using the access code 836-6611-0154 and the passcode 123123. Now, you may have noticed that the mics and videos for attendees of this program have been disabled, and that's so that everyone can focus on our presenter for today. Now, that isn't to say that we don't welcome your questions. We absolutely do. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, please place them in the Q&A. That's the one with a single speech bubble, and then we'll get to those questions during the time we have set aside for that at the end of the presentation. This presentation is being recorded, so if you need to step out for any part of it or you're taking copious notes, don't worry. You will be able to watch this presentation again when it is posted on the YouTube channel, and I will send you a follow-up email with a YouTube link. So you'll be able to access that, share it if you find the program very useful or good for somebody that you know, and be able to come back to it at your leisure. All right. And now let's move on to the land acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kizh, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, the Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians Kizh Nation, San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, and San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. To learn more about the First Peoples of Los Angeles County, please visit the Los Angeles City County Native American Indian Commission website at lanic.lacounty.gov. All right. And now I'd like to tell you quickly about the Work Ready program, and we'll move into the actual event itself. So the Work Ready program started in December of 2020. Since then, the library has been lending laptops and hotspots out of 27 library locations and presenting virtual events on a range of work-related topics in order to help people get a job, improve their work situation, and plan a more sustainable career path. To see well over 50 of our past events, you can head over to the Work and Career playlist on our YouTube channel and view the videos from the past Work Ready sessions. I'm going to post a link to that in the chat so you can go and explore that. And I'll also put that in a follow-up email as well. The Work Ready program is made possible due to funds provided by the American Rescue Plan. And we do have a great January of work-ready events, actually a great January, February, and a little bit of March of work-ready events for you. And next week, we have coming up, same bat time, same bat channel, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Work ready. What's new with resumes? If you haven't written a resume in a while, career coach Liz Moeller is going to review resume writing basics and tell you what's changed about resumes in the past few years. This is ideal for first-time resume writers, or if you're an experienced worker and haven't written one in a while. And of course, that program is absolutely free next Tuesday, January 14th at 11 a.m. You can register for that using the link in the chat, and we'll be happy to see you there. And if you'd like to learn more about our virtual or in-person events, you can go to our website at lacountylibrary.org. On the top right-hand side, you can click the events button for our full calendar for all ages, all absolutely free. And if you just want virtual events like this one, you can hover over that events link. You'll get a little drop down, says virtual programming. Click on that and you'll see all of our Zoom events, also for all ages and absolutely free, presented for you. All right. Now it's time for me to introduce our speaker for the day. Jennifer Rizzotti is a professionally trained and certified career coach and consultant. She is dedicated to helping clients define success on their own terms. For more than a decade, Jen has supported individuals and organizations in transition. Following the seismic shifts of 2020, Jen pivoted to launch her own practice, where she guides individuals, small business, and corporate clients through transformational change. Jen's expertise includes employee training and development, career development coaching, and entrepreneurship. Her style has been described as energetic, methodical, and highly engaging. She's passionate about personal and professional development and lifelong learning. And with that, I'd like to bring to the stage Jen Rizzotti for New Year, New Career. Jen, the stage is yours.
Can everybody see me here? Thanks, Oleg, for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today, partnering on the Work Ready program again. And I'm excited to present my New Year, New Career workshop. As Oleg shared, my name is Jen Rizzotti, and I made the leap to launch my own coaching practice in 2020 following the seismic events of the pandemic. This caused many people, including myself, to reevaluate the direction of their careers. I actually had the goal of starting my own business in the back of my mind for, it was about 7 years. Lesson being, don't wait for the next global pandemic to make a career change. There's truly no time like the present. And today we'll be exploring how you can change careers, pivot, or return to work after an employment gap. Whether you're confronted with a change out of necessity or by choice right now, the tools I'm sharing apply in all of these situations. Our agenda is jam-packed with actionable tips and a strategy to approach any career transition and land your next job. We'll begin with an overview of 6 steps to generate momentum toward your goal. This is what I call the roadmap. Next, we'll complete an exercise together to help you gain clarity about what you want or need in the next job. You can have pen and paper handy to complete the exercises in real time, or work on a note on your phone, or open a window in your computer. In the second half, we'll discuss how to reframe a career gap if you've taken time off from traditional work or been unemployed for a period of time. We'll also reflect on limiting beliefs that might hold you back from pursuing new opportunities. And as Oleg mentioned, we'll save plenty of time for Q&A at the end, so you'll get your questions answered. You'll also get a copy of these slides and the exercises in a handout via email after the workshop has concluded. Our learning objectives today are as follows. Understand how to navigate a career change. Determine what is most important to you in your next job. Number 3, very important, highlight it, underscore it. Review how to harness the power of your network. Number 4, learn how to identify a career skills gap. And lastly, work to overcome any limiting beliefs that might be holding you back. This is an overview of the 6 steps I guide my clients through when they're ready to make a change. We'll talk about each of these in more detail over the next few minutes. But at some point during your career transition, you will need to identify what you're looking for in the next job, most likely refresh your resume, your brand, and your online presence. Think about who in your network might be able to help you, and reconnect with former colleagues, see where they've since landed. Talk to people doing what you would like to do, and assess your skills compared to what you'd like to do next. Now, though these steps are arranged in somewhat of a flow chart type manner, these steps are not linear, and they do not need to be completed in any specific order, with one exception. Identify what you're looking for. This is what I call a work wish list. It's a very simple assessment of what you want or what you need in your next job. And it's so important, we're going to do it together on our call today. After that, I encourage you to continue anywhere in this roadmap that feels appropriate to your search. Determining what you want or need in your next job seems like a basic first step, but it's often overlooked. Job seekers spend a lot of time obsessing over resumes. They tell me they apply for dozens and dozens of jobs online, but their vision remains somewhat vague. They just think, I need to find a new job. Taking a few minutes to actually get clear on what your non-negotiable items are will save you time in the long run, because you will only consider opportunities that meet your base criteria. It can also lead to greater career satisfaction because you are accepting a job or looking for a job that is aligned with your priorities and goals. More on that in a few minutes. In order to make any change, you might need to reinvent yourself and refresh your personal brand. We all have one, especially if you're attempting what I call a 180. A 180 is a career change that is significant, perhaps from one field or industry to something totally different. If your past no longer fits your present and where you're headed, you must present yourself differently. Once you know where you're headed, I encourage you to update your resume. As Oleg said, he has a class next Tuesday. I encourage you all to join. You may want to update your LinkedIn and your social media presence according to your new narrative. Again, this is where you'd like to go. Having a polished and cohesive presence that tells the story you want to tell now lends greater credibility to your new image. It's also just a great confidence builder. Now, you may need to repeat this process if you end up going a different direction. It's not unusual to change course one or more times during a career transition. I also recommend you practice introducing yourself, not your whole elevator pitch, just your name and what you want to do next. You might be thinking, Jen, that's so easy, that's so basic. Of course, I can introduce myself already. But how many of you are doing it confidently in the direction you want to go? It took me 3 years after making my first career change, which was a 180. And if I have time today, we'll talk about that later. But it took me 3 years before I felt worthy to simply state what I was doing now. I still identified as my past self, my past career hat. I was worried people were going to find me out. I didn't feel like I belonged or was qualified enough in my new environment. If that sounds familiar, that's most likely imposter syndrome, and that's another class for another day. But suffice it to say, it took me a long time to simply introduce myself as my new self. So I encourage you to practice. Look in the mirror, record yourself on Zoom, get comfortable saying who you are and where you're headed. Once you feel confident introducing yourself, get the word out and share your new narrative. Again, this is the story you want to tell now, where you're headed. Have conversations in whatever social spaces you are in. Let people know what you're looking for in terms of a job. Be as clear and specific as possible. If you're too vague, it's actually harder for people to help you. I get a lot of emails from people saying, Jen, I need your help. I'm looking for a job. But it's so vague in general, I can't really help. So the best thing to do is be very specific. Let them know what you're looking for, some list of names of companies, or just, kind of like buzzwords, keywords to kind of get the wheels turning so that people can help you. People do want to help you along your career journey. Your former coworkers are a great place to start, especially former managers where you performed well. These people are often a key resource to land your next job or a new job. They know how you operate, and they can often help open doors for you. Let them know you're looking and be able to articulate, again, that direction you're headed. I encourage you to lead with what you're doing next, what you want to do, and emphasize the steps you're taking to get there. You can ask them for information, guidance, and even job leads if it feels appropriate. Often, the most valuable thing someone can offer you is another key or helpful contact from their network. So this is that concept of extended network, which we can talk about a little bit more during Q&A, but that's often the most valuable thing someone can offer. When it comes to finding a job, landing a job, changing careers, or going back to work after a gap, the single most effective method to do that is networking. This is my personal opinion based on my experience in getting jobs and that of my clients, but it's also my professional opinion backed by research. The US Department of Labor, their published stance is 70% of jobs are gained through networking. Other research reflects up to 85%. I've seen 90% of jobs gained through networking. It bears saying that this research was actually conducted before the pandemic. And in my opinion, in the virtual world we now all are forced to operate in for the most part, I think that number might even be a little bit higher. So either way, that's a pretty big statistic. We have to take that seriously. And you have to allocate significant time and energy to networking activities because it does offer, according to research, the greatest return on your time. It's not your resume. I know a lot of my clients, they want me to have this perfect resume, perfect, ATS friendly and all the keywords, but that's not going to open the door. It's the network. Of course, you can still get a job based on your resume and based on merit alone, and you will need a polished resume to share with your network and apply for jobs. As I said, join Oleg's class next Tuesday to refresh your resume. I encourage you to update your resume for 2025, especially if it no longer tells the story that you want to tell now. Lastly, when you're looking for a new job, I recommend you do a skills gap analysis. It means you simply compare your current skills and experience level to the qualifications of a job you want next. Ideally, you'll be conducting informational interviews and talking to people about what you would like to do. During an informational interview, this is where you invite someone to coffee or maybe jump on a Zoom call and catch up. You will ask the person how they got started and what it might take for you to bridge any gap in your experience and land a similar job. Some jobs you're looking at, they might require you to get a certification, a license. You might have to take an online course. You might even have to go back to school to get a degree in the field you want to work in. All of these are important considerations I recommend you explore before getting too far down the road. You might realize midway through your career pivot or change, you don't want to spend that time or money or resources of any kind. So you have to switch to something else instead. It's a process. So give yourself kind of the grace and space to figure it out. And we can talk more about informational interviews in the Q&A as well, because that's an important way to gain information about jobs, but also network. So now that you have the roadmap to navigate your next career move, I want to invite each of you to complete a work wish list. It's going to take us about 5 minutes. We're going to do it together, and you can return to this list anytime after the call and make changes. So get out a piece of paper. You literally just need a blank piece of paper or a note on your phone. We're just going to take 2 to 3 quiet minutes to come up with between 5 and 10 what I call meaningful factors. So I want you to think about what you're looking for in your next job, what you want, what you need, and write down at least 5 factors. Nobody is going to see this list unless you would like to share in the chat pane, and we might want to do that in a few minutes. But be honest with yourself and be really specific. A lot of times my clients have a hard time getting honest about what they really need. And if you're not working, and money is important. So if you're not working and you just need to get back to work, probably money is going to be your number 1, if not number 2. That probably should be right there. Money is important. It's why many of us work, but it's not always in the top 3, especially if you're at a different stage of your career, where maybe you're focused more on legacy building or career from the fulfillment in a different light. So I'm going to pause for about 1 to 2 minutes. Just take a quiet moment. Think about what is important to you in the next job. And this should be kind of an ideal wish list. It does not have to be realistic. You're not going to get all 10 in the next job, but think about what matters to you when you accept a job. And again, we'll pause for 1 to 2 minutes here. Okay, so if you want, drop a note. Let me know if you're coming up with at least 5 in the chat pane. If you're struggling, I'll give you a little bit of inspiration. Some people think remote work from home would be great to have on their wish list, a flexible schedule. At company stage or growth is interesting. Some people like a big company, a kind of blue chip, stable company. Some people want to work for a startup. Think about what is important to you in the next job. What does that look like? Mission, vision, values, benefits, legacy, advancement. There are no right or wrong answers. So we'll take another 30 seconds and try to come up with about at least 5 to 7 would be great. Now that you have your list started, and I appreciate everyone sharing in the webinar chat here, work culture, positive environment, flexible schedule, enough money, aligned with values. I love what I'm seeing here. You're going to get ideas from your peers, I can tell. And the good news is you can redo this list after the call, tomorrow, next week. With every season of your life, it's going to change. It's going to be different. The priorities are going to shift, and that's natural. So it looks like everybody's getting 5, 10. If you have 20, that's great. If you have 3, that's fine too. All the things that are important to you should be on this list. Now, what I'd like you to do, since you have a good list started, is try to eliminate the least important. That might be the bottom 2 or 3. You can strike through, cross them out. What can you live without? What can you live without? What are you willing to give up to get your other top items? The goal here is to get clear about what you're willing to live without, what you're not willing to live without, or can't afford to live without in the next job. So we'll take a moment and feel free to drop into the chat what you can live without. It's going to be different for all of us. I know for me, I could probably live without work from home. There was a time where I thought, oh, I want to work from home. And now that I've been home basically since 2020, I'm like, I actually would like to go back to an office. So for me, that'd probably be something I would eliminate now. I think I'm kind of circling back that other way. I'm curious what that might look like for you. So feel free to drop into the into the chat pane. Once you've kind of gotten clear about what you can live without, then I want you to circle or highlight your most important. And when you look at your most important, if you can even rank them, like by number one, number two, number three, that means you're very clear. Like this is the most important, second most important, third. Try to find what are the three most important and drop those into the chat as well. Flexible location. I like the one comment about like the actual job description, kind of like the specifics of what the job is. I think that's great. Being clear about what you're looking for in terms of job duties, tasks, responsibilities. Respect, definitely key. Yep, I hear you, Margaret, in terms of a commute. Nobody in LA wants to have a 90-minute commute because that often turns into much longer. So remote first, salary, flexibility, culture. I love it. We'll take another minute because I love seeing what you guys are putting in the chat here. 9 to 5, collaborative, full-time benefits. I'm not seeing money in the top three for many people. So job security is important. It's usually near the top, but it's not always the most important thing. Company culture is a big one. Stretching your skills. I like that. Pension. No travel. And for some people, travel might be what they want. And for some people, travel would be what they don't want. So again, stage of life, work-life balance. So the goal here is I want you to identify your top three. Once you do that, think of these as what I call your non-negotiables. So these are items that you actually have to have in the next job. You've determined like this will make you happy or this is what you need to survive in the next job. When you apply for jobs, I want you to only consider those opportunities that have your top three. If a job seems interesting, but it isn't aligned with your current wants or your current needs, I want you to move on. I would encourage you to move on and find something more suitable. You can actually compare your list against job descriptions. And that's what I recommend my clients do is you actually have the job description, you have your work wish list, and you look at these things. And if the top three are not in the job description, you're probably going to want to pass. Otherwise, you might end up in a job where you're not happy. It's not a basic fit for you. And it takes you off track. It just keeps you from going the direction you want to go. And kind of you're wasting maybe time in that job. So the goal here is clarity. Let's see. Oh, yes, I see. So the comments are private, so they can't see. I see that. Yes. So that's a privacy thing. I'll share some of the highlights. Wage is important. Let's see. The right industry company, growth mindset. I love that. Introvert friendly, no work on Sundays. Remote is coming up a lot. Company values has come up many times. It should be aligned with your values. When you work for a company that feels like have the same values and shared values, it feels like you're at home oftentimes. Learning opportunities, mentorship, that would be important to me. Making a positive impact. That impact is huge. Mission, vision, values, impact. I'm seeing a lot of flexible, hybrid, modern office practices, positive working atmosphere. Most people say they'd be willing to work for less money if they have flexibility and they have a nice boss or a nice company culture. I know that's true for me as well. Creative, leave work at work. I love that. We're so connected now that we take so much home and we feel like because we can check our email at 8 o'clock, should we check our email? Having a job where you can actually leave it at work these days would be huge. Professional, teamwork, a lot of impact here and freedom to be creative. Okay. Opportunity to be a great part of a great team. So these are all great. And again, you can go home and redo this list tomorrow and you might have different answers. I think when you also start looking at job descriptions you want to apply for, it might shift. You might say, hey, you know what? I'm seeing this is a job I really want and it requires me to be in an office. So am I willing to give up my work from home setting to go back to the office because I really, really want this job? And maybe that job has like 5 of your other criteria. So you're willing to shift and say, okay, I'm actually going to be flex on that one for this particular opportunity because I really want all the other things that it has, the company culture, the benefits, the impact. So sometimes the goal here is just have your top three, but remain flexible in your thinking always, because you might be surprised sometimes when an opportunity comes up and you decide you want to see that. You want to see it. All right. So moving on. This is another kind of short exercise you can complete now. We can take a moment. You can also complete it after the program because you will get a copy of these exercises. Now that you've gained some clarity about what you want or what you need in the next job, I want you to think about who might be able to help. And usually, like 2 or 3 people come to mind almost immediately that you might want to reach out to. And these people generally do not work in the field that you want to work. They do not have the job that you want to have. They're just kind of people that along the way, maybe you're friendly, maybe you have kind of like mentored each other, or you've just kind of been a support person for each other. Those are the people you can contact. Because like we talked about, that concept of extended network, oftentimes what your contacts can offer you is someone who points you in the direction and gets you a little bit closer. So they don't have to be in the job or the field that you want to work. They can just be kind of people that you've helped each other out and you feel like you have good rapport and you can reach out to them. So I would encourage you to jot down the names of 2 to 3 people, if it comes to mind, who might be able to help with your current search. And kind of taking that a step further, once you put some names down, label the name with a request. You're going to say, I'm going to reach out to Oleg for advice, or I'm going to reach out to Jen for information. The helpful contact, that one you can list as well. But in those cases, you generally want to know the person because if someone's going to open up their personal network or professional network and kind of refer you, you do want to have a sense of rapport. It's not random. You would probably not reach out to me and ask me for a helpful contact unless I know somebody. Actually, Oleg probably, we may know some people. But at the same time, you want to make sure that there's kind of a balance there in your request. But think about who you might be able to reach out to and try to label them with a specific request. Remember, networking is a two-way street. So it's a good practice to either lead with what you can offer in return, or maybe articulate that at the close of your message or your email, because it is this sort of like reconnect. You're asking a little bit for a favor, but letting them know like you're here. This is what you're doing. If they need help with that, you're available. So always articulate what you can offer when you do make this request, because usually it is this kind of mutual, it's mutually agreeable relationships over time. That's really all that networking is, and you can kind of help each other out. I would also, if you want to next level this exercise, I would put a date on there that you are committing to reach out to these people. So you have your 3 names, maybe say by the end of January, I'm going to contact all of them. Maybe by January 15th or January 20th, you actually want to put a date on there so you'll hold yourself accountable to sending that message. Because usually, I see it with my clients, the hardest thing to do is take that first step. So I always say, like, kind of commit to the date, hold yourself accountable. Feel free to drop it into the chat if you're willing to say, I'm going to contact these people in January or over the next 7 days, because it's really just the first step. All it's going to do is kind of get the ball rolling. It might be as simple as a LinkedIn message or a text message to your neighbor, somebody you have rapport with. Again, this is going to be different for everyone. There's no right or wrong answers, and you don't need to come up with 20 people. When I started my coaching business during the pandemic, I thought there's like 3 people I'm going to reach out to. I reached out to the first person. She was actually the number 3 name on my list, but I reached out to her and it opened the door to my first client, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So I ended up not even reaching out to my other 2 clients. So again, we hadn't spoken in about 7 years, and I was like, hey, we're reconnecting. We're all in the global pandemic. Hope things are going well. Let's jump on a call and kind of catch up. And then I just let her know what I was up to. I started my own business. I finally took your advice, and I said, if you'd love to chat, I'd love to catch up. And it just kind of went from there. We kind of reconnected, and our mentoring relationship kind of continued, and that really just paved the way for my business to get off the ground. So remember, an extended network is important, and also just kind of maintaining those relationships or reconnecting when the time is right. All right, I'm just double checking the questions here, and again, we'll kind of address some of these during the Q&A. These could be people that maybe was a professor at your school, maybe it's a former manager, maybe it's your neighbor, anybody that has might be able to help you and provide some leads. Okay, so moving on to kind of the second half of our class today. This is important because I think a lot of you, and maybe some of you today, are facing this. You haven't worked in a while, or you have some gaps in your resume. Feel free to drop it into the chat pane. Why do these employment gaps happen? And I'm going to let you guys populate the chat with some reasons there, because I have some reasons I can come up with, but I know you do as well. And I'll read them out. Writer's strike, yes. Industry strikes locally. Medical reasons. Retired, that's a big one. Layoffs. Life happens. Family. Caregiving. Pandemic. Maternity leave. Taking care of aging parents. Burnout. Discharge. Surgeries. Went back to school. Contract. Following strikes. Job market is tight. It takes longer. Disability. Burnout. Caregiving. And by the way, the ones I'm reading, I'm seeing more than once. I know you can't see the chat there. Stayed home with kids, 20 years, laid off, a lot of layoffs, a lot of caregiving. And medical problems, moved across the country, care for spouse, charity commitments, burned out, helped your family. I'm loving all the sharing and engagement here, so I do appreciate it, because for me, kind of having this chat makes me feel like we're on track, and I appreciate nonprofit world funding. So funding is challenging. Finding that is unpredictable. Repurposing your career goals. Toxic environment, contract work, fear. Thank you to the person that said fear, because a lot of us feel that and we don't always articulate it. That can be a huge reason why this happens. Gig work, relocation. Okay. So at some point, most of us will experience an employment gap. And one of the most common reasons, as you were alluding to in the chat, is caregiving. It might be children, commonly spouse, aging parents, experiencing a layoff, especially due to the pandemic, very common. Locally, we had the industry strikes, entertainment industry, writer strikes. You may have suffered an injury, health crisis, toxic boss, burnout, etc. I didn't have retirement on this list. That's a great one that someone mentioned there. Going back to school, starting a business that didn't work out, traveling, just quitting your job because you want to take like a sabbatical, right? I just want to take some time off. So I'm here to remind you that all of these reasons are valid. It's okay to take time off from traditional work. A lot of times we're kind of rebranding this now as a pause, as a career pause. The word gap may have a negative connotation, especially on your resume. So I oftentimes with my clients just say, you took a pause from work, and it's okay to do that. Whether it was by choice or out of necessity, it does not matter. A lot of the ones you're sharing in the chat here, it seemed like more of necessity, like you had to do it. It was not a choice. Some of you may have chosen to quit your job and travel the world or retire, and now you want to go back. So fortunately, since the pandemic, gaps have become much more normalized, and employers are more understanding than ever to kind of go back to work after a break, because so many people have experienced these gaps, especially starting in 2020. So I want to remind you, it's a good time to go back to work now, regardless of how long you've been gone. It doesn't matter if it's 1 year or 20 years. It's kind of the same process. Maybe you haven't worked. You chose to stay home with your children. Maybe you relocated, as someone said, care for an aging parent, passion project, go back to school, travel, whatever the reason. I want you to try to own this time with confidence. You have to tell yourself, I wouldn't do anything differently, or maybe I couldn't have done anything differently. So it is what it is. And you kind of have to own that without feeling a sense of, you don't feel bad. You can't feel a sense of, you're not feeling bad about yourself, because it was reality. You had to do it. Life happens. And by the way, it happens to all of us. I want you to focus on kind of the positives, the lessons learned during your break, and try to be confident in that narrative. And you might need to practice, saying what you were up to. So you feel like you can say it with confidence. I would recommend, if you're struggling with that narrative, write it down, edit it, try to practice it in front of a mirror, because you need to be able to say, I took time off from work. I did not take time off from life. This is what I was doing. Your experience during that time was valid. Okay, so I just want to remind you of that. I see this all the time, and oftentimes it leads us to not even seek new opportunities because we're embarrassed, or we're not sure how we're going to get over this gap in our resume. And really, it's the network, it's conversations. And when you have these discussions with people, they'll say, hey, I went through that too. I took time off, moved across the country, took care of my mom in the last year of her life, wouldn't do anything differently. That's the experience of one of my clients, for instance. We all have stories like that, and it's what makes us human. Our work is what we do. It's not who we are. So I just want to remind you that your time away was valid. We're going to segue into another activity here for a few minutes before we get into Q&A. In order to reach your career potential, you'll need to work on overcoming limiting beliefs. These may be tied to your career gap or your career pause, but these are the false thoughts that hold us back, and we all have them. I've yet to meet someone who does not have a limiting belief, and generally we have many of them. Today, for the purpose of this Zoom, we'll focus on the ones affecting our job search and our career, but you could apply this tool that we're going to use to any area of your life, relationships, family, etc. This could be fitness, whatever it is. We all have these beliefs that are holding us back. And generally, these present in the form of those stories that we tell ourselves over and over again, oftentimes for decades, and we never stop to examine they're actually untrue. They keep us from seeing and achieving our potential, our goals, our dreams. And some examples that I hear most common are, I'm too old. A lot of times people say, I'm too young. Nobody will take me seriously. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the money is a big one. I don't have the time. That's probably the biggest one that my clients say. I don't have a degree. I'm not qualified. That's just not for me. Anytime you hear yourself saying that, it's a limiting belief. And you have to kind of stop and say, okay, well, what could be different here? What are the possibilities? The first step in overcoming a limiting belief is to simply identify it. And we're going to work on that for a couple of quiet minutes. Many people go their entire lives, without ever questioning these beliefs. They accept them as fact when in fact they are fiction. I had a client recently I was working with, and we went through this exercise and she couldn't get over it. And she said, Jen, I just want to accept these as truth. Like, this is my truth. And it kind of like the exercise, it kind of missed the point, because I think she could not see a new possibility. And that's kind of what we're going to try to do here, is reframe it. So I'd like you to, on a sheet of paper or a note on your phone, write down one limiting belief that comes to mind when thinking about landing your next job. And it could be some of the examples I shared. If you're comfortable, you can drop it into the webinar chat and I can kind of mention some of the ones I'm seeing. I'm going to pause here. We'll take a quiet minute or two, write something down that you think might be holding you back. I'm going to take another 30 seconds just quietly, because some of us need to kind of work quietly to get it out, but I'm just impressed by all the shares happening in the chat pane, and I'll share them in a moment. Okay, I'm going to read these out for a minute, because I think you might be surprised how many people are feeling the same way that you are. Amazing on the engagement. I think we've got like 40 and another 16. So like over 50, 60 people dropping this right into the chat. So I may not be able to read everyone's, but I'm afraid of change, age, I'm older, 20-year gap, too old, 53, job market, too messy, too many internal hires, ageism, not experienced, enough, not capable of starting my own business. Younger people are who the managers want to hire. Lacking valuable skills, feeling too old, being interviewed by someone who's your junior, lacking experience in that field, blatant ageism. By the way, ageism starts at, I believe, 40 for women anyway. Lack of a degree, lack of a degree, lack of a degree, 3 in a row. 3 different people. My computer skills not up to date, lacking time or energy, not being good at interviewing, job market, terrible. In tech, there is an over 45 perch, sounds like ageism. Again, for the tech specifically. I hear that from folks in the entertainment industry as well. Someone told from prior government work not to have online presence. So that concept of zero online presence could also work against you. If I Google you and I can't find you, I probably won't hire you because I'm not sure kind of what you're about. Burnt out from the resume, revisions, ATS. I understand all that. It's like this world we live in is increasingly complex. Fear of public speaking, being too picky, untraditional career history outside the normal trajectory, kind of like not a linear path, it sounds like, but more of a, different hats. Not having work, not clear on next steps, away from work for 7 years, feeling like that's too long, too much has changed, not qualified, not having the energy, fear that working in the industry will affect one's health in what they were doing. Let's see. Not being able to pivot because you've kind of been pigeonholed, doing something for 25 years, lacking relevant or transferable skills. Okay, so then there's 48, 58 more. So I think at least maybe close to 100 people have shared their limiting belief. And I think what I'm hearing is a lot of the same things. And what I'd like you to do is, on a fresh sheet of paper, I want you to try to reframe that. Now, you're hearing many of your peers and participants on this call feel the exact same way you do. So I'm going to take a quiet 1.5 minutes or so, 2 minutes maybe tops. I want you to rewrite it and try to frame things in a positive light. Try to think of solutions. If you tell yourself you're too old, you're going to need to pivot that and say, actually, it's never too late to pursue a passion, right? Julia Child started cooking in her 50s and she became Julia Child, right? There's a whole book on people who have had this like third career in life, or kind of like a third section of life where you think you're middle-aged and then there's like a whole other third, coming down the pipeline. So it's really never too late to kind of start a business or pursue a passion project. You all have transferable skills. You may need to get in touch with what those are. So maybe that's a goal, is I'm going to redo my resume and I'm going to highlight all my transferable skills because I do have a lot to offer. But I want you to take a quiet minute and I want you to rewrite it. And if you're struggling, we'll kind of look at that in the chat in a moment, but try to take your belief and try to make it action-oriented. What can you do differently? How can you think differently? Even if you don't believe it, you can say, well, the research shows like more people are transitioning different careers. Like the current generation might have 7 careers. In my day, when I was young in my 20s, I thought I would have 1 career. I've already had, like I'm on my 3rd and I'm still kind of hitting middle age. So I do think, we do have some, we live in a time where we're more open to that. It's good. It's good for you. You can really start at any age. And try something new. So that's coming up a lot, but I'll pause here and you can rewrite yours to the extent you're able. So we're going to take 30 seconds, quiet seconds. And if you're having a hard time writing this, think about what you would tell your friend, your spouse, your child, maybe, if they were struggling with what you're struggling with. Maybe be that compassionate ear. Maybe some of the people that dropped something in the chat, think about the advice you would give them and how you would spin it. So try to spin it. If you're struggling, think about what you might say to someone else who's struggling with that same belief. So now I'm seeing some of the reframes start coming into the chat, and I love what I'm seeing, because one person said it, you just need one opportunity. And that's been so true for me in my life. It's been one person to open the door. I knew one contact when I moved to LA who got me my one job, who led to, so it's like, it's literally this power of one. And when people say I don't have a network, you all know people. You all have friends, family, neighbors, people at your gym, the barista at Starbucks, the cashier at Trader Joe's. I mean, these people are talking to people all day long. They have vast networks of people that you have access to. If you just start having conversations, it just takes one. So I love that person who said that kind of power of one. Here are some of the reframes. And again, remembering you're not alone in these limiting beliefs, and maybe these reframes will give you some inspiration to do it differently. Now is the time to make the difference. Don't be afraid to break the cycle. I love this person who said, I would tell myself, younger self and future self. So you can think about that. If it's 10, 20 years ago, what would you tell yourself now? I have great skills and work ethic. I'm a great problem solver. I have valuable skills to contribute to a new industry. Because I'm starting new, I'm not entrenched or beholden to ways. I can iterate quickly. Just begin. Research, find resources, ask for a mentor, anything. Just get started. By coming on this call today, I will say you've taken the first step. So you're already ahead in terms of making progress here. It's never too late to change. Transferable skills, new positions, pivot. Even if it doesn't work out, I can still use this to better my life. Be the first in my family to be that content creator. Be the first to take that risk. Choosing wisely. So again, rapid pace of change. Several people here are alluding to that rapid pace of change. I just want to remind you, like, change is the only constant. We talk about it, but in the world we live in now, especially since the pandemic, the tech, you're going to have to get on board. I don't love it either. I still struggle with the technology and the Zoom and all these things happen, but we all have to kind of keep learning and growing, because that is really just the norm. It's kind of the same with everything. I always say I have this Darwinian approach to change. Organizations, that don't adapt to the changing preferences, the changing times, the changing customer, product desires, et cetera. Like those, organizations that can adapt, they kind of die off. They shut down. Netflix promoted its product to, I believe, Blockbuster, you probably know, and then in like the 2000s saying, hey, do you want to buy us? And Blockbuster was like, no, we don't understand what this red box or Netflix is. And they passed. And of course, we know what happened to Netflix. We're all streaming, and Blockbuster missed the boat. So I always remind you, we're the same. We kind of have to adapt and look for those new opportunities, and realize like it is somewhat of if you don't adapt, you may not survive in the current economy or the current job market. So there is always that need to look for new skills. You can volunteer, you can take LinkedIn learning classes or Udemy, or all these online courses are available generally for free. And you can kind of just get the ball rolling, jumping on a Zoom call like this, network with people on the call. These are all the steps you could be taking. So we all are faced with this overwhelm of like new technology, things changing, and I don't think that's going to slow down. So buckle up and try to find some resources to move you forward. I'm getting a lot of reframes here. And I would encourage you to, practice this reframe if you can after the call, if you're struggling with more than one thing. A lot of times it's not just one thing that's holding us back from new opportunities. It might be a few. So be kind to yourself. Kind of think about what you might say if your friend was sharing this with you, or your spouse or your child. You would be compassionate. You would encourage them to just take that first step and not get too far into the future, but just really, kind of commit to that. But I hope you can see now that you're not the only one struggling to kind of move forward. One final thing to think about is maybe what obstacles stand in your way. I sort of think about life happens. We discussed that in terms of the employment gaps, but maybe have a plan for that in 2025. You will get sidetracked. Life will happen. There will be setbacks. It will be challenging. And it's not always easy. Doing what you want and maybe doing what's right is not always the easy road, but it's worth it. This is your life. This is your career. It is worth it. And all these things happen to all of us. So have a plan to kind of get back on track. It's only January 7th. So you have 358 days left, 358 fresh starts. And every day you have the opportunity to kind of do it differently. And as someone said, it just takes that one phone call, that one message on LinkedIn, that one maybe webinar where you kind of meet somebody and it kind of opens a door. But I just wanted you to feel you have plenty of chances ahead. And not all happens at once, and you're in it for the long haul. So this is your career. I hope you make the most of it. If you're interested in any career services, you can always email me, contact me. You'll get my contact information when Oleg sends out the slides. I do offer discounted rates for library participants. I'll honor it for all of 2025. So you have a long time to take advantage of it if you wish to do a resume review or have a checkup, career checkup type coaching situation. I'm happy to work with you. Simply mention the workshop you attended and we can kind of take it via email from there. We're going to move into Q&A. Oleg will kind of jump back in to moderate, but I just want to thank everyone for their participation, especially your engagement. I feel like the webinar chat was just like on fire, and I love that because, we want to feel like you're walking away with something that you can go and do differently. So I hope you're thinking differently, feeling maybe a little bit better about things, and knowing that you're kind of facing this with your peers, and look forward to hearing what questions come out in the next 15, 20 minutes that will be on this call. Oleg.
Thanks, Jen. Yes, that was powerful information, particularly the section where people listed their limiting beliefs and then had to get over them. Not easy, but incredibly powerful. So let's
Very
get into
powerful.
some of these questions. The first question we had was, is social media presence an absolute? I dumped Facebook in 2015 and Twitter in 2023. So social media presence, necessary?
Again, it depends on who you are. Like I thought I was the last person to join Facebook. I thought I refused to get on board with the technology. I didn't want my life out there. And now, I balance it. I rarely post, but if you're the type of person that doesn't want to do social media, you own it and you say, I'm going to have to get back in the real world, and you're going to have to network in person. You're going to have to talk to your neighbors, the dog park friends, whatever it is. So if you're not comfortable being online, then I hope you're IRL, as we say. And if you're IRL and you're getting it done that way, perfectly fine. There might be times where you're applying for a job and they don't find you on LinkedIn or anything. So maybe consider as a compromise, like a basic LinkedIn, just so you have your name and a picture up on LinkedIn. So they say, okay, this person is a real person. It's not like a spam type of application or something. I might say if you can compromise with that, that would be my one thing. But no, if you own it and you can let people know, hey, I'm not on social media by choice, absolutely fine. You'll have to call me if you want to reach me about a job or something. As long as you're owning it, that works for you, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you. Yes. The next question. My new business is a creative endeavor that is not ready to be money making at the moment. I also recently lost my job in the career I've been doing. I feel that I need to continue to look for at least part-time work in my current career while my creative endeavor develops. Any guidance on how to pursue dual goals would be welcome, or am I wrong to think I can do both?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think whoever had this question, it's very common. I'm hearing this a lot because everybody I know, especially in LA, where most of us may be, everybody has a side hustle and they often lead with that hustle. I'm from the East Coast, and when I moved to LA, what shocked me was everybody's secondary thing they were doing is actually what they said first. So you might have a day job as a social worker, but do some occasional acting or voiceover work. And when you introduce yourself, and here in my experience is they always lead with that creative endeavor, the side hustle. They say, hey, I'm actually an actor. And then they have the day job, right? So I think we live in a place where that's very welcome. At least I always was surprised about how many people say, hey, I do this work and then I have this job that pays the bills. So, you're in a good place for that. The more you can kind of develop your side gig into more of a full-time job, it is an easier transition. Most people cannot afford to just kind of stop what they were doing and go all in with the new endeavor. But you may want to come up with a plan saying, what would it look like if I do go all in with the new endeavor? Like, how much money do I have to have in the bank? willing to take out a small business loan. What are those considerations? Because you might realize it's in reach, within 12 months to maybe do something like a big change like that. But I think you're in a good place to make that happen. I would encourage you to have stability, because if you just go all in with something and it's not really, the foundation isn't there, you're going to have other consequences and maybe some stressors that would make it hard. So I'm in favor of more of a gradual approach. And once you can kind of leave the last career behind and go all in with the new venture, that works generally better for most people, unless they have some resources or they're willing to, acquire some resources to do it, kind of make the leap sooner. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So the next question is something that many people applying for jobs online experience or think about. So the remote jobs on LinkedIn seem like most opportunities don't respond. Would you say there's a lot of scam type remote jobs or a large application pools because of geography? So, what would be the reasons that remote jobs on LinkedIn wouldn't respond to folks?
I've heard this recently, and I need to dig up the research, but someone said like even some companies are posting like fake jobs. Like there is this whole like I can't think of, maybe, like if this sparks idea for you, but there was a kind of some recent things that came out where these companies were posting. I think maybe they get discounts for posting like, I don't know, so many jobs on Indeed or LinkedIn or these sites. So they were just putting up like fake descriptions. So
Yeah.
you're applying for a job that doesn't even exist. And again, this is where that networking, talking to somebody, if you want to work for a company, the very first thing you need to do is get on LinkedIn and see if they have any mutual friends of yours that work there or friends of your friends, and kind of dig up, who is in that company, because you really want to talk to a live person and get noticed. A lot of these online applications, they're getting like thousands of resumes per job. And
Especially
sometimes
on LinkedIn.
it's LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah, especially on LinkedIn because
Yeah.
they make it so they have that easy apply. So people
Easy
are just
apply.
going do,
Yes.
tapping through all of them, even if they're not qualified. And so employers
Yes.
are overwhelmed with mediocre or lower than average applicants, but it's still a lot.
Yes. And the AI is screening it first, or the applicant tracking software is kind of screening that. So before you even get to a recruiter or a live person, they're having to weed out thousands potentially of resumes. This is where that getting a live person to just email your resume or hand it to someone, because that is the most effective way
Hmm.
to get the job. I had a client tell me that she applied for over 2,000 jobs over a
Jeez,
period of 2 years, and she finally got one offer, and she's
that's a
working now. But
lot.
I said that was 2 years and 2,000 applications. That's not what I want you to do. I want you to know where you're headed and try to find those companies, identify people who could help, and then deliberately reach out and say, I'm interested in working here,
Mhm.
and try to do it the old fashioned way. I guess it's the old way to do things, but I think it's still, it is, according to research, the most effective way.
Mhm. We actually have a program, a work ready program about doing that kind of research on LinkedIn, and I'll put a link to that in the follow-up email where we get deep into how to sort of find the right people. So anyway, I'll put that in the follow-up email so people can see that. The next question is also about networking. I think you touched on it a little bit already. What if I don't have much of a network since I just moved to the US?
Yeah, I think that's where just kind of getting out there and meeting people and whatever you enjoy. And I think networking is just down to like building relationships and having conversations. So if you feel you want to maybe get out, find a volunteering opportunity, or you want to, kind of get involved with your neighbors or community building and say, what's going on in my community? Can I show up and volunteer for something or get involved? And I would just start trying to have those conversations. When you move here, be selective. You are kind of faced with like a big landscape, right? So maybe it's join a professional networking organization. For me, I always joined, like, I was a runner in my past life, so I would join a running group. I would join a networking organization that was free, and that's how I found a free mentor and something I wanted to do. So like professional networking organizations are most of the time online now, so you don't even have to leave your house to network. You could
It's
literally
convenient.
do that. You can volunteer online now too. So there's a lot of ways to kind of to start putting yourself out there. But I would say be selective. Think about what you actually enjoy doing, and then maybe go look for that in your community. To try to build some genuine friendships or connections there.
Let's see. So you mentioned this at the beginning of the talk today. When you talked about networking, you talk about what you can offer in return. So what are some examples of what you can offer a person in return when you're, kind of getting information, finding out about jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you kind of think about we all have some experience, and you might not think you have any experience, but we all have some experience. We have transferable skills, we have things we can offer. So oftentimes it's, reconnecting. If this person helped you in the past at some point, let them know how they helped you. Like that's a
Mm.
great lead. And kind of say, hey, this is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I was doing studio work and now I'm out of work. So I'm available for projects. If there's anything I can help with, here's some things I'm good at. I'm good at writing copy, or I'm good at editing, or, whatever skills you have, even if you're not monetizing them as your business. Like for me, I was always good at resumes. By the way, I've been doing resumes since like for 20 years, and I've only been a
Mm.
career coach for the last like 4. So people would come to me because could you do me a favor? Could you write me a letter of recommendation? Could you help me revise my college admissions essay? Like I always liked writing and editing, and I would do it for people for free. So maybe think about the things you do for free or that you're willing to do. Like it's just easy for you. If you're good at tech and you can help people like set up an online Facebook profile or something, we all have those different skills that we like to do and that we're good at. So I would just identify like what are those kind of skills you like to do, and maybe offer them up and say, hey, I'm available to help with these if you need anything. But generally, yes, it's nice to articulate something in return because it is kind of a mutual thing, and just let them know you're available. Maybe it's something like, your neighbor just had a baby. I'm available to walk your dog, right? And just kind of reconnect because maybe they work at a company that's hiring and you want to kind of talk to them about that. So just be genuine. It should feel natural when you offer something. Make it something you're generally want to do, right? It's something that you would enjoy doing. And kind of just maybe it's as simple as like, let's go for a walk and I'll buy you a cup of coffee, just generally, be sure you're kind of just not asking for favors without kind of having this understanding that it is supposed to be mutually beneficial. That's a great question.
Yeah, somebody in the chat mentioned referral bonus. So there's some companies that
Yes,
offer referral bonuses to their employees who bring in somebody who I guess gets hired. So that's something
absolutely.
that they get. You don't even have to do for them, that they just by bringing you in, they can do that.
Absolutely. That's a great one.
So here's a question about employment gaps. What if you did nothing productive during your employment pause?
Well, that might be a limiting belief because I have a hard time believing that. However long the pause was, we were all doing something, and we may have to like reframe in our own mind. This is kind of like owning that time off with, it was valid. Whatever you were doing, whether it was caregiving or maybe you were looking for jobs or you were, applying for jobs online every day, you were still doing something. And you're going to want to kind of think about reframing how you spent that time because that may be holding you back from like having a conversation. You may not even apply for a job because you feel so limited by this, for instance. Oleg, did you have anything you want to share on that? Because this
Yeah.
comes up a lot. This comes up a lot.
I don't think I have anything much beyond what you said, but I think that the way to do that, to reframe what productivity means, or the reframe the idea of being proactive. So if somebody, for instance, if I was sick and I couldn't work for
Yeah.
a few years, I wasn't being sick during the time that I was healing. I mean, you were doing something. You were actively doing something. You were you were verbing.
Yes.
So let's see. How do you recommend approaching the current job market? It feels like companies are only hiring people that are experts in their fields with too many years of experience.
So how do you pursue? So feeling like it's too competitive? Maybe could you repeat the
Yeah, I
question?
think I think that's probably about right.
Saturated.
Yeah, that
That,
there's. I mean, I don't know. How somebody came to this conclusion in terms of like the current job market, because everybody's always talking about like what's happening in the current job market, but the job
yes.
market is very vast and
It's
varies by industries.
mhm.
So I suppose for this person, it feels like companies are only hiring people that are experts in their field with too many years of experience. So it seems like they feel like they don't have enough experience to compete, maybe.
I understand. And that is also, and that can be the opposite in another industry. They might be hiring young
Mhm.
people who are less expensive, who are commanding, lower salaries or kind of getting a start. So again, this ties into the like, I would say limiting beliefs, but being aware of like what's happening with industry trends. And some people say the job market's thriving. Some people say it's terrible. It's all a matter of,
Mhm.
perspective. So I think it's going to be probably specific. I don't know if this person share what industry they're in or
No, no, it was pretty
entertainment or
general.
kind of like some of these trends, you're going to have to say, like, is the writing on the wall? If
Mhm.
80% of studio workers are out of work and it's been 2 years, I met a guy this weekend. I was walking my dogs and he was baking pizza in his driveway and he has a
Wow.
mobile pizza oven business. And I said, is that your pizza oven? And he gave me like 2 loaves of bread. He was baking off the dough, and he said, "Yeah, I've been out of work in the industry for a couple of years. I've started a pizza business, and it's his hustle right now. He's doing it on the side, but he's booking like big gigs, And he did like a mobile event at a brewery, and he had all this left over. So we had a conversation, and I think it made me feel like, okay, like if the writing is on the wall in your industry and you're kind of being forced to pivot, you better start thinking about it, because you're not alone. And a lot of people are, if your industry is maybe not feeling good and they're only hiring the most qualified people and
Hmm.
you're not one of them, it may be time to think about a move. And where would your skills be welcome? Healthcare is always seems to be booming. Tech seems to be, they're saturated, but there are some industries where that will welcome you and say, we want
Hmm.
your skills. We need people. And so identifying what those trends are so you feel there's more possibilities. It may be time for a change. It's hard to say, but when do you kind of move on and say, I'm not going to like put all my eggs in one basket. I wouldn't recommend anyone do that. We all have to kind of be flexible because life could happen at any time. You might have something physical happen to you where you physically can't do your job anymore. And, so there's things that could happen anytime. So it's good to start thinking about it, the possibilities if you're facing that, if you're feeling like you're being boxed out for any reason.
So I don't know if this is a question or I don't know if it's a question for you specifically, Jen, but let's give it a shot. What was holding you back from doing what you do now?
So that would have been, as somebody said, fear, limiting beliefs,
Hmm.
imposter syndrome, all of the above. I didn't feel qualified enough was my number one. I always want to feel prepared, like I can do the job. I wanted to be a career coach. So first of all, I fell into this by chance. I had a whole past life doing something totally different, and I got injured physically. I couldn't do my job. It was a very physical job, and I couldn't be on my feet. And I took a quote, desk job, and I was a career services person. I worked with people one on one doing resumes and cover letters. This was after 10, 12 years in a totally different industry, totally different field. And so when that happened, it felt like the end of my career. Like my life was
Hmm.
over and all of that. But I realized this is what I should be doing. And then for 7 years, I went back to work in corporate America because I just wanted to have more qualifications. I wanted to feel more qualified to do what I'm doing now. And I could have started this business then? Probably. People said, just start the business. You're qualified, but I didn't. I wanted to get more experience. I wanted to get certified as a coach. And I eventually went on to do all those things. But I would say it is that fear of that not being qualified enough. It really held me back from doing this a lot sooner. And that's, I think, true for a lot of people. I didn't feel like I could start my own business. Who was I to be an entrepreneur, or start a business? So, all of those things can hold us back. And usually, 99% of the time it's in our head. When I ask my clients what's holding them back, they always say, "Oh, I don't have money or time," but that's all in your head. Like that's a perception. Like you can find the money, you can find the time, there are workarounds. So it's usually a question of your attitude, not necessarily your resources or whether you're committed to the idea. It's all really in your mindset, kind of getting yourself in the right frame of mind, the growth mindset, as it were, possibility oriented. That's a
To
great question.
look at these are as problems that you're going to solve, right?
Yes. And other people have figured it out. I mean, plenty of other people and have started a coaching business. And that's why the one person I contacted was the only person I knew who had done that. And I said, "Hey, I'm finally starting my business. Can I talk to you?" And she was delighted. So again, that power of one and just take that first step. And when you take that first step, whether it's serendipity or the laws of attraction, whatever you believe, things will come back to you. I've been amazed in my career when I just take like one small action to kind of put myself out there. I'm amazed at how it just snowballs. And you can't plan for that. And so be open to that kind of serendipity because it does happen. And my clients tell me over and over again, "You were right. I just had to make that phone call. I just had to do that one thing." And so I encourage you to take the first step if you're afraid to get started. A lot of
Yeah.
resources out there.
Speaking of getting started or taking a chance, the next question is, what are some good sample informational interview questions?
Oh, so that's great. And I think I'm see if I can find a slide on that I could include for you in the handout. But the questions would be, a lot of times how they got started. You want to identify people who are generally doing what you want to do, or at least they're in a field or industry that you want to work in. Asking them how they got started, asking them what the day-to-day is like. Oftentimes we have an idea that we want to be a project manager or a teacher or something, but we don't actually know what that looks like. So describe for me, what is your day-to-day? What does that look like? Ask them what challenges they face. Ask them what they don't like about their job because we all have things we don't love, about it. Like as an entrepreneur, I like having the flexibility of my own business. I don't like the details of it. I want to just do the work, but there's so much administrative stuff, behind the scenes stuff that I now have to do that I don't love, invoicing and billing and all this. So, you ask the person, what does the day to day look like? So you're going in with your eyes wide open. So I don't think there's ask thoughtful questions. I would say if they have a bio or a website or you've looked at their LinkedIn, don't ask them anything that's online, surely that you can get the answer to. You want to have a general idea of what they do so you're not wasting their time. It's like if you want to meet with me and you haven't looked at my LinkedIn or you don't know what I'm about, you're kind of like you need to do a little more research. So I would treat it the same way as you would a job interview. I would do your research first, find out as much as you can about the person online before you talk to them. So you have more valuable conversation. It's more interesting for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, leading with curiosity. Why are
Yes.
you contacting that person? What do you want to know?
Hmm. Yeah, it's different for everyone.
All right, let's do maybe like one or two more questions because we're right at time.
Sounds good.
So let's see.
These are great questions.
Uh, should a LinkedIn summary be in first person or third person like a resume? Should it tell more of a story about who you are and where you've been? This is like a LinkedIn question.
I love it. I believe in Oleg, correct me because you've done more recent. I believe I just rewrote a bunch of my clients in the first person. I think that summary now they want you to lead in the first person. Is that your understanding?
I
That's
I
like
don't
in
know if
mine.
I don't know if I don't know if one is better than the other. Most
Yeah.
of the time, I see them in first person.
Trending that way now. Yes,
Yeah,
trending that way.
but I don't
So
think there's a right way to do it.
no, and nobody's going to not hire you because your bio's in a third person or your
Right.
so again, but I believe the trend I'm seeing is, that first person.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the follow-up was, should it tell more of a story about who you are and where you've been? Well, the summary part, I mean, it's not like a resume. It's an opportunity to write in prose. So
Yeah.
if it can be catchy about something that's saying important things about you, it's like a large summary statement or a large objective statement.
Yeah, and I would say, keep it relevant. If you did something but you no longer want to do it, don't make that the focus because that may be where someone that's all they read is that professional bio at the top and your headline and they just stop there. So like changing your headline, I mean, if you were a writer, for the studios for 20 years and you're not doing that anymore, change your headline because people will look at you and say, "Oh, that's what they do." And they may not like look further. So when you're especially changing careers, this is where that refresh your online presence comes in. You update your resume, update your online narrative because you want it to tell the story where you're headed. So also maybe consider rewriting your summary where leading with what you're doing now, and then you also have this past with all these transferable skills, which are wonderful. But what people read first, they tend to remember. So I would be, mindful of the story you want to tell now, and if it's in line with it, that's great.
All right, last question. I recently had an interview using the STAR method. They wanted data-driven responses, but it was difficult due to job gap, so I couldn't reference measurable data. Do you have any tips on how to handle that?
Yeah, well, the STAR method is great, widely available. It stands for situation, task, action, and response or result. So you can look it up, on any of the Google or job sites. But the best way to do that is to kind of, I would say, prepare for future examples. If your industry is asking questions, using the STAR method, you're going to want to have those examples ready for the next time. And they could be from any job. It doesn't have to be, like linear, like it doesn't have to be chronological with your resume. So you might have a great example from 3 jobs ago. I would, lead with your best examples in an interview. It doesn't have to be, in that kind of chronological format. But having the star prepared ahead of time so you're ready to speak to it would be the way to prepare. And kind of what did you learn from this interview? What could have gone differently? How could you have, been more prepared or done it differently? So a lot of companies they do use the star method, and some companies will give you tips on how to prepare for that. But if you're not familiar, it's a great practice to just kind of have some high level bullet points that you can reference in an interview as well, because this is it's an interview technique. It's a way to prepare for interviews, and you may be asked something similar in your industry next time.
Thanks, Jen. So
Yeah.
we do have other questions, but I think we've reached our time for today's program. I always want to answer all the questions, but unfortunately we can't always do that because we're all bound by time. But Jen, thank you so much for providing all of this information and for the informative and enlightening and inspiring presentation, helping us have a new career for the new year. And thank you to all the folks out there who were so active in our chat and our Q&A. Without you, there would be no reason for us to have a program. So thank you for sticking with us today.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
I do
Best
have
of
a
luck.
short post-event survey that I'm going to post in the chat, and if you have a chance to fill that out, please do. We would very much appreciate it. Once again, thanks, Jen. Thanks to all the folks out there, and we'll see you next time.